Welcome to my channel. Here are 5 scary stories that happen to Reddit users that will keep you up at night. Story 1, the doorbell. Ever heard your doorbell ring at 3 a.m.? I did, and it still haunts me. I lived alone in an apartment building in a big city. The apartment was on the top floor with a balcony. One night I was awoken to the sound of my doorbell. I looked through the peephole and no one was there. I didn't recognize the tall, thin man in the security camera either. And when I looked back at the door, there was no one there. But I could have sworn I heard the faint sound of someone whispering my name. I was debating whether to call the police or just go back to sleep when I heard the doorbell ring again. So I called the police and told them about what was happening. They said they would send someone over to check it out. While I waited for the police, I went to the front door and tried to listen for anything. And that's when I found a photo slid under the door. It was me sleeping in my bed. The picture had been taken just hours earlier when I had woken up for work. I knew I wasn't paranoid because I hadn't posted any pictures of my apartment online recently, and I rarely ever told anyone my address. When the police arrived, I showed them the picture. They said it was printed on my own home printer. I never figured out who took it. Story 2, the basement window. You never really know who's watching you until it's too late. I grew up in a small town in the countryside. My bedroom window faced the woods. For years, I thought the trees were my neighbors, and that my only company was a family of deer that lived in the clearing. One night, I was awoken to what sounded like someone walking directly outside my window. I sat there listening, and I could hear what sounded like heavy footsteps pacing back and forth. I thought it was weird, but I went back to sleep. Every night I would hear the same exact sounds, always at 3:32 a.m. I thought it was my reflection, but when I looked, there was no one there. I continued to see the shadow every night. Then one night, I saw a hand press against the glass from the outside. When I ran down the stairs, nothing was there except muddy boot prints leading away into the woods. A week later, I found the same prints inside my living room. Story 3, the wrong number. One text message ruined my life. I was 19 and texting was how I communicated with most of my friends. One day I got a random text from a number I didn't recognize. It said, "Nice blue hoodie. You look good in it." I assumed it was a wrong number and I laughed it off. But then I realized I was wearing a blue hoodie. I checked the windows. None were open and I lived on the 3rd floor. Before I could think about it anymore, I got another message. "Don't bother locking the door. I already have a key." I was freaked out. I went to check my spare key, but it was gone. It was usually kept on the hook by the front door. Story 4, the late night ride. Rideshares are supposed to take you home, not hunt you down. I used to use a rideshare service a lot, but now I never do. After a night out with some friends, we decided to use a rideshare service to get home. We got in the car and asked the driver to take us home. The whole drive, he kept asking creepy questions like, "Where do you live? Do you live alone?" I was uncomfortable, so I asked to be let off a few blocks away from my home. I didn't want to walk the rest of the way, but I couldn't take it anymore. The driver kept insisting, but I got out of the car and walked home. Hours later, I got a notification saying your ride has ended. I opened it and saw that the driver had ended the trip in my driveway. The scariest part is I never gave him my address. Story 5, the attic. You ever get the feeling someone's living in your house? I found out the hard way. I had always heard footsteps above my room at night, but I figured it was just my upstairs neighbor. One day I decided to check the attic. It was supposed to be empty. I climbed up there and saw that someone had made a small nest out of blankets and clothing. I told the landlord and he said he would look into it. That night I heard footsteps again. I went back up to the attic to investigate and set up a baby monitor. At 2 a.m., the camera activated. A man crawled out from under the insulation in the ceiling and whispered, Don't tell them I'm here. When the cops arrived, they found a sleeping bag and weeks' worth of food wrappers hidden in the walls. That was the end of the episode. And if you like these scary stories, stay tuned for more.